Okay, so today we're working on a Manco Thunderbird. I bought it with an engine that was absolutely trashed. I have a couple engine choices we're going to be putting on, but first thing we got to do is strip it down. I've already ripped off a bunch of extra electrical I didn't need and threw it somewhere. It's garbage. So, yeah, let's start by taking off the old stuff. I have all new throttle and grips and all that for it, so we're going to strip it down. Very short screws, apparently. I'm not using it, but I do want that still. There it is. By the way, this lift cart is from Harbor Freight, and they're amazing. So we got the seat. That's gonna. Always hated that design. They have a very small pivot point, and then just the shocks hold the back, so they wobble a lot. I think I'm gonna break out the welder and see if I can do something better for that. Like a couple 9/16. Inside is 1/2 inch. I lied, no it's not. Had to find the right angle. It was way over tight, almost like I've worked on it before. There, to the side. Here's the other side, and there's just one in the front it pivots on. That's not factory. I mean, there's one there factory, but this is not the factory. Okay, and the seat is off. Oh, threads are worn off of that. It's been there a minute. I don't know what year this is, but I know it's old. I'm not going to be using this plastic piece. I don't like it. It makes it harder to use the seat, and it's already been cut out for various accessories. Somebody did that in the past. That wasn't me. Oh, I guess keep taking the shocks off. Had about enough of that ratchet in these 2 tight bolts. Well, they got that chain jammed in there pretty good. Okay, and I'm removing everything because I'm going to actually strip it down and paint it too. So we're going to do fenders next. nicer to take off than the shocks were. At least the first bolt was. My washers from that just kind of went everywhere. I won the lottery and the prize is getting to buy new hardware. Mismatch hardware. Guess that's not hurting anything, but it sure does bug me. I can get that rear tire off of here now. I need the chain off too, but it's kind of jammed behind the sprocket, and it'll just be easier. I can take the sprocket off of the wheel once it's off. So it's pretty big, I'd say probably 15/16 or so. It is 15/16. Which I guess I don't have the wrench for in here, but I have a 1-inch and we're just going to use it. Need a little coaxing. A little washer / shim fell out. I don't know if it needs to be there, but keep it in mind and definitely keep it. I think we're going to go off balance as soon as I remove this too. Also, just for fun, let's pretend that that's a black socket. There's a lot of shims on this bike, I tell you what. That's disappointing. I just realized that this used to be a purple bike, and not that many of these came in purple, but this one did. They painted it red to make it look like all the others. That is disappointing for sure. My wife would be real upset about that one. Just don't get why you would take the rare bike and paint it like a common bike, but whatever. Somebody else owned it, not me. I don't know what color I'm painting yet. I don't want it to look like the common one. Not that they look bad in red, it's just kind of boring. I'm kind of thinking maybe a, sort of like a Ford blue or something. I don't know, I mean, making it up as I go, really, but blue's where I'm going so far. Don't need that grip. What do those look like? ½ inch, maybe? Yep, I don't have one. It's like they painted these handlebars black. I'm not sure what color. Actually, no, they probably started out black, but it's just crazy. There's overspray in both directions. Like they just tried to paint both of them while they were all assembled. I know it's just a cheap little mini bike, but that bugs me. That also tells me they probably didn't actually do any prep work. So I might even just run this up to the car wash, hit it with the power wash quite well. Because if they didn't do all that prep work, that paint's not on there very good. And though I'm not going to hold my breath, there's a small chance I can just spray off this and get back down to the purple underneath. And that would be awesome. I mean, that would then mean that this one becomes my wife's. But that'd be fine. I don't know why I'm using that. I have sockets. Got no paint on the threads, it's making it stubborn. So there's no bearings on this, just little plastic bushings. Oh, that's amazing. The front suspension literally just unscrews. That's really good because I'm cleaning it up. That's just a lot easier if I can take it completely apart. Okay, so that was off camera. Basically what I did though is this just literally unscrews. There's some welded right onto here, and these coils go right into it. It was jammed. So I just took a punch to the end of this spring part and just kind of hit it until it loosened itself up. Okay. That's disassembled as far as it goes. It's really a shame. I do my own powder coating where I can, And everything that I've taken off so far I can do. If this was that much smaller, I could do it, but I'm limited by my oven space. These things do have a very primitive style of brake. Essentially just, it's a flat plate that scrubs the back tire. So for now, I'm probably going to leave that. I might look into an upgrade. But I don't plan to do too much inside and along the lines of upgrading it because it is just a very small, cheap mini bike. We'll see how it goes. But I think for at least right now, I'm not going to. And that is not going to hold itself up this way. Oh yeah, that was definitely a nice purple. So this frame is completely stripped down now to all the removable components. So yeah, it has to be cleaned up real good. I can literally scrape off a lot of this paint, which makes me think I might be able to get to that purple stuff down underneath. But whether I can or I can't, I mean, I'm going to have to take it off to get the... As much as I'd love to have it powder coated, I'm not going to spend whatever it costs to pay somebody else to do it, so... This part will get spray painted, and I will at least need to clean it up pretty good for that. But I don't think I'm going to do that today. Okay, so we're going to be doing the seat bracket on these. The Manco Thunderbirds are a pretty reliable bike. One of the big flaws that I think they have, it doesn't bother some people, but the seats tend to wobble because they pivot up here, and the only thing that holds the back is the shocks. And since they have rubber bushings, it can definitely wobble that out. So I got some things I'm going to be doing to try to stiffen that up a little bit. After I clean up my garage a little bit because it's a bit of a mess, so I'm going to take this out and put it in the yard so the neighbors can see it. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is I found these well, I didn't find them. I pulled these out of a snowblower I gutted. I have two frames I have to do this to, and that's conveniently enough I had two of the little bushing / spacers that I found in there. I think I'm going to use the existing bracket up here, but I'm going to drill out these holes and align them because one is definitely bent. To the exact OD of this, put it in there and hook it securely. Weld that in there, and then I'll make a wider bracket for the front of the seat. And I think having more support outward should keep it from pivoting. So I think the first thing I'm going to do though is straighten these out so they match. They are still factory welds, but they are crooked. I have a torch, so I'm going to heat it to help me bend it back there. I think that'll be a lot easier on me. Definitely going to melt the paint off, but that's okay because I will be painting it anyway. I'm hoping I don't have to just cut it off and then re-weld it, because I'd prefer not to. That should do it. Looks pretty straight now. At least straight enough to work with. That actually turned out a lot better than I expected. Conveniently enough, the one size there on my step bit is exactly the size I needed. Still got to be careful because it's definitely still hot. Okay, so I had to do a little bit of tweaking on that thing to kind of straighten it out. I don't need it to be absolutely perfect, and you'd never notice if it was a little bit off while you're riding it. So from this way, looks pretty good. And comparing it to just this back bar over here, going to say it looks pretty close that way too. I don't really need to measure it because I'm not worried about it being 100% perfect. I think I'm going to leave it right there where it is. So this is the seat bracket right here. There's a hole here and here. You probably can't see with the camera, but seat just bolts to that. You sit on here and it pivots up front. Very simple design, which is one of the reasons that I like these bikes. I just think it needs that little bit of improvement with the stability. Yeah, basically the problem that I'm trying to fix here, now I can demonstrate it, is just that this is the only thing holding the back of the seat. So as you're sitting on it and riding it, I find a spot where I can hold it because the frame's hot, but this can go side to side. It pivots up in the front, but it's only a roughly 1 inch wide spot, if that. So it still pivots around. I'm just making a wider area up top, because if it's more over to the sides here, it will be a lot more stable. Okay, I'm going to have to build something for that. A lot of what I'm using is just pieces off an old scrap snowblower. I ripped it apart before I started this here, and it's been very useful as far as not making me go buy stuff. And yeah, nothing fancy at all happening here. There's some sort of a fucking kill. You here. Hey, is my suspension moving?
One side.
One side?
Yeah, one side is. Do it again. Yeah, one side is. What?
It feels right.
It's moving.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that is the hops.
Yeah, we're free right up. With very minimal side to side. We're not using the factory gas tank with these because the Predators that we're putting on it have the gas tank on it, and I only have one gas tank for it. I'm not buying another one. So we're removing these brackets. Just going to grind off the welds and hit it. It's a shame too, that's such good paint right there. And such a bad factory weld right there.
Bad weld. one thing too. I don't think they're going to be changing to anything else. Bin and Van, is that what they were calling it? Oh. Oh.
Bim and Ben.
Bin and Ben.
Well, that's not the best way I wanted it to go, but it will absolutely do it.
Day one and day two are coming alive.
We came across one problem. The rear hub for one of these mini bikes looks like at some point, I don't know if the bearing just got trashed or if it popped out for whatever other reason, but whatever happened to it, it ended up messing up the area that the bearing sits down into. Where they're supposed to just sit down in there. I know you can't see that very well. My camera doesn't zoom the greatest. But the bearing should just sit there and not really move. Actually, it probably should even be tighter than that, but that one's acceptable. This one here, see if we can, oh yeah. At least on my display I can see that. And then once again, yeah, my camera doesn't zoom. I'm going to try my best to show this. Yeah, it's not really going to see it, but the inside of this race here is completely messed up. So I hopped on eBay. I can't find one of these. I can find a couple different hubs, but I'd have to modify them. So the best plan I've got, I guess I had a couple plans. I thought about just welding the inside of this and then just putting it on the lathe and making it back to that. But really this is, the only lathe I have here is one of those really mini lathe things, and I don't want to have to support it down here and then have this here. I wouldn't get very accurate. So the best I came up with is I think I'm going to just cut this entire damaged part off, pretty much flush with this hub. And then I cut apart another rim that takes the same bearing. And I just got this little tube part here that the bearing does go into, actually appropriately. So I'm going to cut this, and I will put it in the lathe for that, just to flatten that down, make it kind of trued up. And the same with this piece here. Ended up just setting it down, and I'll weld that to it, just so then I have a new bearing insert for it. Take a couple measurements first, just so I know how long it actually has to be. I do have the second one, if I needed it. If I cut something before I measure it, I can still go back and see what it should be. Looks like 560 thousandths. I could probably get this fairly flat just with the grinder, but since I have the lathe, I'm going to use the lathe. Okay, so now I have a hub there that can hold a bearing again. Or doing anything about the valve pumps. this right here is the brake for these. It's a scrub brake setup. Essentially, when you push your foot down on this part here goes back and just hits the tire and causes friction and slows it down. These go through a couple of tabs on the frame, and then they had like little welded bumps. But I had to remove them to clean it all up completely. So to put it back in, I could weld it, but I have to powder coat them first. So I'm not sure how well my camera's going to... And my camera's not really going to show you very well. But I drilled a couple small holes here and one here. And I'm just going to put some washers here and then cotter pins. Because there's not really a lot of force going side to side. Most of the force is just going to be kind of front and back with it when it rotates. So all those cotter pins are really going to have to do is keep it side to side, and they'll do just fine for that. Okay, so the bigger parts like the actual frame, I wasn't able to do with the powder coating, which I would have liked to, but they don't fit in my oven. A couple of these smaller parts like the kickstand and the brake, I'm going to. I figured that the powder coating is a little bit more durable than the paint is, and it should put up with the constant like rubbing on them as I use them. So we got that going. And my oven's already preheated. I have the gun that I use is from... That's not a very stable stand.
Oh, goodness.
And I knew that. I put it there. The gun that I use is from Eastwood. It's a dual voltage. It has a little switch where you can, dual voltage. It's low or high. The high voltage helps it stick better. The low voltage is for like tight corners. Anywhere that you might be worried about putting on too much powder, you can put it on there. I don't use that setting very much. So for powder coating, essentially you have to put this clamp here and it electrically charges the parts that you're doing. They also have to be free of any dirt or old paint. They have to be down to metal. But I have that clamp on here. The gun is actually charged the other way, or at least it is as long as I'm holding this button right here. So basically you hold the button while you're applying it, and then this is hooked up to air, very low pressure. I think it says it can go from like 5 to 25 psi. It's probably pretty close to 5 right now, and a lot of powder comes out. It also helps if you shake the gun a little bit while you're going. So just hold the button, pull the trigger on this, and kind of go near there. You don't want to get too close though. The tip of it will spark to your parts, and the powder is flammable. So, I guess we'll get started with that.
I did. The sparky breaky.
Okay, so I've got the powder on there. Now I'm going to unhook my clamps. Got to be careful with it because at this stage in the powder, it's not actually bonded. It's essentially held on there with like static electricity. Anything you rub it on will absolutely wipe it right off. I have it hooked to this oven rack because the oven that I use is literally an old kitchen oven. So I'm just going to, as carefully as I can, pick this up and go put it into my oven. Hopefully without tilting it and dropping it and rubbing it and everything. I put them in the oven. Depending on the powder that you use, and I guess a couple other factors, it may vary. The powder that I use, I got right from Eastwood. And essentially there's I can't think now of the term they call it, but I'm going to call it the gloss point. Essentially, if you check on it in a minute or two here, it's going to be definitely melting and turning into something. Right now it kind of looks like just a fuzzy layer, but it'll actually start to gloss over. It might even be called gloss over. But from that point, it needs 20 minutes to cure. This is also very forgiving powder. If you don't do it quite right, there's also a 20-minute buffer zone. You can't really overbake it unless you really forget it. So I have the timer set. I set it for 23 minutes. I'm probably just going to go check it in 1 or 2 minutes, just see if it's glossing and adjust the time from there. The first thing I'm doing out here today is I'm going to put the brake levers back on. I have to kind of feed them through in an interesting way, so usually that's a lot of fun. So I guess I'll get started on that. This bar that I just put in here for the brake lever is normally held in with a couple of welded spots, just to get big enough that they can't go through the holes on here. But since I wanted to remove it and clean it and paint it, well, I powder coated it, but get a new coating on it anyways. I came up with a different idea where I drilled small holes near these tabs, and I'm just putting some washers and some cotter pins. There's not really a lot of side-to-side movement. Most of it is going to just be pushing on the back tires. The cotter pins are only helping with the side-to-side. Another thing that I have is new foot grips. These are the exact same style as what came off. They're a little bit thicker walled. Not that I really think that matters too much. I got these fairly cheaply. They go on a 3/4 inch peg. That's what my bike has. I got them from OMB Warehouse. I believe they were $8.99 a set. Shipping was pretty reasonable. I think I paid like $5 or something. They showed up in 2 days. Those just kind of go on here. I already have the other side done. They don't seem to fit as tight as hand grips where you have to use the air compressor or anything. I just kind of grab the frame like that, shove it downward, and we have foot grips. So I also put the kickstand on. It just slides into the tube and has a return spring, so I didn't really film any of that. Let's see if I can get up here though. This way. Yeah, kickstand goes down, kickstand goes up. Also, I have the brake on it with its return spring. So I'm just going to do the same on the other frame. I think I'm going to start with the foot pegs on this one. On the other one, I did it kind of mid-job there because I realized that the brake kind of comes up and rests on the paint. So instead it hits these grips. Got some foot grips. It's also worth noting too, I told you that I got these from the OMB Warehouse. That's not a sponsor or anything. That's just the best spot that I found at the time to get them. The only complaint I have is this sticker is about the right size to cover up the Predator logo, but they only gave me one, which is fair. Learn from my mistakes and put that under the foot peg before I start. The other one I had to pull back off and take all my cotter pins off because I forgot. This kickstand doesn't fit this one. The other one did have a pretty good sign of wear on it, so I bet you that came off of this frame, so I'm going to have to swap those. I guess next we'll probably get the front forks on. Okay, we're going to reassemble the front ends right now. Come up here just to show the parts. Got, of course, the forks. Got the end of the forks here. And the coil spring. These are super easy to assemble. I believe I showed the disassembly, but just in case I didn't, essentially there's a spiral on there that's welded, and a spring is a spiral. It goes on there and literally just screws into place. And the bottoms will do the exact same thing. I didn't actually notice that. These springs here, though, they have a small end and a big end. Diameter-wise, the little end goes towards the top. There's no bearings for these fronts. They just have little bushings. They can be either plastic or kind of a copper/brass. I had one frame that had plastic, and I had the other one that was actually the metal one. I decided to actually switch it up and use one of each on there. I have the metal one on the bottom, since that's what's going to be supporting the weight of the bike, just so any abrasion there will happen on the metal instead of the plastic. Plastic's up here, I guess, just as the normal spacer. So I'm going to grab a set of front forks and get those on. It's really starting to look like a mini bike again. I like that. I'm going to get the forks on the other one now. So one of our tires didn't hold air, and it's the only one that's tubeless. I could take it apart, clean it up, maybe put some bead sealer on it or something. But I think instead I'm just going to use a tube in it. I had this sitting around from a snowblower that takes a very similar sized tire, so it doesn't cost me anything to do it. I filled it up earlier just to make sure it held air appropriately. So step one is to deflate it entirely. 100% as much air as you can get out of it. Any pressure? Yeah. First step though is breaking the tire down off of the bead of the rim. On a small tire like this, there's a lot of easier ways to do it. Sometimes you can set it on the ground and jump on it. I've actually put stuff like this in the jaws of a vise and clamped it. That'll work. You can drive over it with a vehicle. And those are all good ways to do it. But I own one of these down here. And if you have a tire machine, you get spoiled and you don't use anything else. You get spoiled. You don't. Why would I do it the old way if I have that? So the first thing we have to do is remove the old valve stem. Inside of it, there's a big nub there. So usually I just cut them. Now, sometimes you can force the tube in through here. I like to at least get one. Well, I like to only get one side. We get one side of the tire up off the rim so I can get the tube in there real nicely. And I like to do it with the side that does not have the valve stem. Right now, there's not a tube, so I don't have to be super careful. When I'm putting it back together, I will have to be. It's a good idea to inspect the rim. Make sure there's not anything sharp on the inside. Rust counts sharp. It says very light surface rust. There's not really anything horrible in there. Nothing that's going to affect it too much. Then you put the tube in. Usually the valve stem is off center, so make sure that goes to the right side of the rim. The tire was stubborn coming off of there. kind of stuck to some stuff. It didn't really want to slide, so I'm going to lube that up with a little bit of dish soap. You may look at this and ask why I didn't use tire lube. You just saw that I had the tire machine, so the good answer for that is I have bought tire lube to have with the machine, and there is not a better tire lube that I have ever found than dollar store dish soap. And it's specifically dollar store. It's like this gel, original type 2, the blue stuff. It comes out as a gel. It's horrible for dishes, but it's the absolute best tire lube. Now we have to put this tire back on. I don't think I said it out loud, but I lined up the valve stem there, so that's out. Sometimes you can put something on there to hold it, make sure it doesn't flop through. I'm not doing that this time, but that's in there. And now I have to be real careful, because when I go to pry this tire back around onto the rim, if any of these catch the tube, I will ruin the tube. That's why it's important to have it as much deflated as possible. Close enough. Get rid of that. Now, with any luck, I didn't catch the tube. I don't believe I did. You only insert the tools into there as much as you absolutely have to. Kind of clean up the excess dish soap. It's not going to really hurt it that much. Actually, it won't hurt it at all. But make sure my valve stem's still in there. Then I kind of got to look in everywhere I can and make sure that I'm not going to pinch the tube in between the tire and the rim when I inflate it. Right here at the valve stem, it could give me some trouble. Kind of working it up and around there. If you pinch it, you will almost definitely ruin the tube. Okay, I think I'm good, so now I'm going to inflate it. One simple shot. 2 shots. 3 shots. 4 shots. As the washer comes up. Is it moving though?
Yep.
At some point you'll feel it get solid. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fins.
Still crooked.
Hit it.
Hey.
That's the brake.
I'm gonna see this thing.
Spin the tire though, can you do it?
Barely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can see how it's not a super effective brake. So I don't have any washers currently. It's almost easier.
Okay.
Back on that way. Remember, put your hand here. Push inward. Okay, put the handlebars on this one. I'm not putting the throttle cable on yet because we're still going to be doing some other stuff and the cable will just get in the way. So I'm just going to loosely put this throttle end on here just so that it's there and don't have to worry about it anymore. That way, even though there's no engine, we can still sit on it and make room noises.
Most important part.
Getting heavy.
Yeah, I bet. Yay!
Rub. also worth mentioning too, these are the grips I'm using. And it's, these ones are 1PZ. They are Chinese stuff from eBay. I know I talk poorly of a lot of that stuff. I have actually found that most of the stuff that they make is, you can tell it's a cheaper material, but it's cheaper stuff that does actually function as it's supposed to. When I pull the grips out of here, they're not quite the soft, squishy rubber that's, I guess, that you could really clench your hand on comfortably for a while. But at the same time, it definitely is a rubber grip. And in this box, I have a twist throttle with a grip, the other grip. I have a handlebar lever and a throttle and a brake cable. I think I paid like $12 for this entire box. So for what I paid for it, they're absolutely worth it. I've never actually had any of it fail. Going to be fitting an engine to it now.
Yay.
Got a little bit of an interference issue with the exhaust. It's pointed right at my frame, so we'll probably have to like heat it up and bend it outward or inward, but somewhere. We'll figure that out later. Also, nothing in the paperwork actually tells you this, but the threads inside of a Predator crankshaft are, they're not metric, surprisingly. They're 5/16 by 24. I think it's going to be long enough.
Above that, under that.
Oh, look at that.
Yo! Look at that.
I just moved the whole bike.
You did move the whole bike.
Well, I slid the engine back. That takes us to right there.
Yep.
Okay, so I've moved the engine all the way backwards right now. And then I measured out how much chain we need. I have to cut the chain a little bit. You want to move it all the way back first because this doesn't have any adjustments on the rear tire / axle. So the way to adjust it is to loosen the engine and slide it forward to stretch the chain. But I have to take a little bit off. My chain breaker is the Harbor Freight style. There's several of them that look like that. I don't actually prefer this one. There's some of them kind of have jaws that fold in. This one needs tools, a 14 and a 17. Tighten up this first part just to the outside of the chain. And when you tighten up the smaller outer part, it pushes the pin through. It does work, but I prefer the other style. Okay, so now I have this here on. It's on the length that I need to actually take out. So I tightened up this nut, which is just clamping the chain into it. And now that that's tight, I tighten this one here, and it will go and press the actual pin out of the chain. It will also probably get my tool stuck in the hole where I pushed the pin out of, which is the main reason I don't prefer this tool. A lot of times when I'm getting close, I like to start tilting it, because the less I have to put that pin in, the less likely it is to actually stick my tool to it. Got the chain on, the master link's there, but obviously it's very loose. I'm sure that shows up. So we're just gonna, the bolts are in for the engine, but still pretty loose. Now we just have to slide the engine forward till the chain is tighter. Once it's at the proper tension, then we'll tighten it up and just spin the tire and make sure that it does sound like the chain is operating smoothly. I'm also going to kind of just look at it on here, make sure it looks like it's straight, just to make sure that it's running smoothly. We shouldn't have any trouble with it. These can just take a very basic cable, but the cable I bought has a little tiny knock is a horrible word. There's a big ball of lead / solder, whatever it is, and it's made to fit the Mikuni style carburetors. These don't actually need it though, but it does fit through the little screw here, so we don't have to remove it. You know, I said that and now it's making a liar out of me. We might have to remove it. Yeah, it's not going to fit.
No.
then you want to check the free play in here. Like right now, I can jiggle the throttle a little bit without actually activating the throttle. I can jiggle the throttle control without activating the throttle on the engine. I want to make sure that at full tilt in any direction, I can still do the same. Also want to make sure that you're not going to pinch the throttle cable anywhere. Doesn't seem like we are. Stays about the same. Then you loosen this screw to essentially take up some of the slack. If you tighten it too much, you will start actually activating the throttle. Definitely don't want to do that. I can't wiggle the throttle at all now. So lots of free play. Okay. It's better to err on the side of too much free play. If you have too much, it just takes a little bit more of a turn to actually activate your throttle. But if you have not enough and something catches on this a little bit, then it can actually start to activate your throttle. These aren't super powerful, but even on this it could be dangerous. But if you get something real peppy, you'll hurt yourself that way. So we have a fully functional throttle now. Guess onto that exhaust, huh? I try not to block you entirely, but I'm also probably going to be standing right in front of it, so. But I think I explained what I was doing. I'm heating this bend right here, and she has just a longer stick there to hold outward. Because it's interfering with that, we're just going to bend it so the exhaust comes more out the side.
That looks like a...
So other than the seat, I mean,
We're assembled.
Today what I'm doing is getting the seats ready. We're not using the factory seats on them. They're kind of round. I don't like the look of them, and also because I'm doing a custom seat cover, I didn't really feel like covering the round seat. Just seemed like it'd be easier to do a rectangle design. I'm still using the factory seat bracket. I did modify the front. I know that was in the video earlier. But for the most part, the seat still mounts the same. There's still a hole right here and a hole right here. I'm also putting a hole here and here, just for a little bit more on that. And I'm building a metal frame that will go to that. Then I got this plywood right here behind me that I'm going to use for the platform of the seat. Conveniently enough, the exact size that I needed, I already had sitting there as far as the one dimension, so I just have to go as far as I need. For the width of it here, so I've already got that marked. So in a minute I'll get that cut. These here are the actual brackets that I'm making for the seat. Basically, it's just a couple 1/4 by 20 bolts welded into the cross frame here. And I'll flip it upside down here just so it's easier for you guys to see. But it'll be like this, but exactly upside down. Drilled out so that that can go in there. The plywood will be in between here, and that'll actually hold the plywood down. So I'll get that cut and I'll get back to you. Got my boards cut here. I probably will round the corners off a little bit just on the sander. Now I can show you that it fits this pretty much perfectly. Kind of just line it up by eye. Hopefully that's close enough. So we're starting here to do the main part of the seats here with the foam and then the covering. The first thing I'm going to do is cut a piece that's just a little bit bigger around, maybe just an inch or two, bigger around than my piece of wood. And then I'm going to fold it around and staple it just as a cushion right here, just so it won't rip the seat cover material. There's one layer. Like I said, the main purpose of this one here was just so when I wrap the seat material, the cover around it, it doesn't wrap onto the wood and kind of cut itself. The material we got is not actually seat cover material. Okay, so there's the second one. Wrapped around there to help prevent the seat cover itself from actually ripping. And I'm just going to cut a bunch of sheets like this. and keep stacking them until they get to the height that I want them to be. This is a mattress topper, by the way, because it was only a couple dollars, and seat foam for some reason has gotten really expensive lately. And I have just the right combination of cheap and broke. I don't think I've actually showed it to the camera yet, but the seat cover material that we chose was based on Thing 1 and Thing 2's hair. Nice, fluffy. It's almost a fneed. Now that came out exactly as good as I had hoped. I am zoomed all the way out. I'm sorry, our camera doesn't zoom well, and it doesn't focus up close.
He's so fuzzy.
But yeah, that was the idea with that was to mimic Thing 1 and Thing 2's hair, and I think it does pretty well. Well, as a wise man once said, second verse, same as the first.
What's the matter?
Okay, I've got the seats are all ready to put on here. I have the brackets made up, they're in there. So next I'm going to put the shocks on since they support the seat bracket. So up until this point, it was just a red mini bike. Now, this has become the theme. This was definitely the very most important part that makes it Thing 1 and Thing 2 themed, and not just a mini bike. That seat cover turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. I realize that window behind is probably blocking a lot, but trust me, it's good. So this one's ready to leave the table.
Woo!
Grab the front.
Yep. Vroom, vroom. Okay, well, as you can see, they're running and driving mini bikes. We've actually taken them on a couple little trips. I had geared them in a way where I thought that they were going to accelerate nice and quickly, but not accidentally flip the front, do wheelies and flip us over. But they should have topped out around 25 or so. I calculated wrong. According to the little GPS app on my phone, this one here does about 36. That one's just a little bit slower just because of the sprockets I had available. They both have the same 10 tooth on the clutch. That one has a 54. This one only has a 51 tooth. They still both accelerate just fine. So I'm going to leave the gearing alone. It is doing pretty well how I like it. Yeah, we've taken, I think our first trip was 3 miles or so. They're nice, comfy bikes, despite being so small. I guess that's just half the fun, though. Anyways, though, we're going to wrap this video up because we made bikes. Thing 1 and Thing 2, themed after the Dr. Seuss characters, of course, which is why these nice seats here.
All fuzzy.
And the black and the red. Not a real complicated scheme. The seats definitely turned out exactly like I wanted them to. So, if you liked the video, of course, let me know if you want to leave a comment or something. If you want to see more of them, let me know. I have a whole backyard full of various projects. There's mini bikes, go-karts, four-wheelers, three-wheelers. You can let me know anything you want to see. I can move that to the front of the list. And now that we're at the end of the video, I know a lot of YouTubers start the video with, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. We're at the end of the video. If you liked the video, like and subscribe to my channel. But if not, let me know why you didn't. So yeah, we're going to wrap it up there, and we'll get more videos on the way for you.